Well, hello, happy Monday, and I hope your day has gone well so far. It's been a busy weekend and busy day for me so far, but everything's going very well. We're going to have a very, very interesting topic today. The panel is going to discuss the pitfalls of the holidays. We are in the midst of the holidays. Really, the holidays, these years starts in September with all the Christmas marketing and things like that. And before Halloween came, there were many stores had their Christmas decorations and things for sale and the like. And so I remember when I was a little kid, you'd watch the Thanksgiving Day parade, and it wasn't until Santa Claus was the last ride on the parade. So when Santa Claus came in on the Thanksgiving Day parade, that brought in Christmas, and then all the stores broke out with their Christmas decorations and gifts and the things. But we're in a different time now, so the marketing starts much earlier. So we are really in the midst of the holiday season. So I think this topic is going to be point on for you tonight. So without further ado, let me bring on my panel. Hello, Asosa. How are you doing this evening?
I'm good.
Welcome to the show. Asosa is our resident nutritionist, as you know, and she counsels patients all over the world and how to change their lifestyle and improve their lifestyle with a healthy approach using nutrition and exercise and various other techniques in terms of improving overall health and well-being. And hello, Celeste.
Hello.
Resident pediatrician. She's trying to save the kids of the world and try to prevent them from becoming my patients in the future. And so Celeste uses a plant-based dietary lifestyle approach for children and helping them reverse many of their illnesses, because many kids have chronic illnesses, and she uses that approach. So, without further delay, we are here in November. Thanksgiving is this Thursday. And many of my patients, talking to me about the holiday season, what their plans are. And so what I want to do is, start this discussion off in really two parts. As we often talk about, the holidays, bring about, good cheer, or theoretically it should bring about a lot of good cheer and good time. It should be a time where we recover and relax, from, the hustle and bustle of the routine part of the year. It theoretically should be a time where we get with our family and the sharing of gifts and sharing of Thanksgiving and just interacting with each other. But oftentimes it's different for many of us, and perhaps too many of us, have these pitfalls that we're having to deal with during this time of the year. So I thought I would get into that. Part one, we'd talk about the pitfalls, and then, after the break, we'll come back and, as we always do, try to give solutions to our audience in terms of how to avoid these pitfalls in a way to empower them to get through the holidays, not just survive through the holidays, but really thrive and hopefully make the holidays valuable and meaningful as they're intended to be. So what are some of the issues that, your patients deal with or your clients deal with in terms of holiday pitfalls, and what are some of the things that you're challenged with?
It varies from person to person, but when I was working in a weight loss clinic, it was mostly people just worried about gaining weight, but I had a track record of none of my clients gaining weight.
Wow.
Yeah, everyone lost weight over the holidays that was working with me, but that's because I had people earn their meals. And so I would have them increase their activity and do it like in a fun way. Like I had some clients who went and like ran a 10K or a 5K with their family.
Oh, wow.
It became more like a communal way to bond. And then they would go eat instead of just like pigging out and then not having any sort of way to deal with your excessive caloric intake. Now that I'm focused on a whole bunch of different types of issues, there's a lot of things that come up. There's the weight loss piece, there's emotional eating, and also just dealing with emotions, especially if clients are coming from toxic families. A lot of people don't talk about that, but like if a family is not exactly the healthiest place for people to be, the holidays can be very triggering because they don't feel like they don't feel like going home, or they don't feel like.
What are some of the issues you've dealt with? Do you have any anecdotes, general anecdotes you dealt with, particularly toxic families? I think that whole issue of toxic families, it's something that hasn't come to mind with me, but I mean, it's a good point that you raise. Any particular examples you have that you dealt with?
No, I can't give any specific examples, but what I will say, because a lot of times then, like, the interesting part about my job as a nutritionist is I'm a behavioral coach. I'm also technically a life coach. I talk to people about a lot of things. And so some of it starts to go outside of my scope into, like, sort of like what you would do with a psychologist or something else. And when it does, I make sure that they have other resources and other people to talk to about those issues. So generally, when we're speaking, a lot of people are trying to figure out how to, maintain their diet with the external pressure of their family. And that's something that always comes up with every single person, especially if they're working with me and I've put them on a plant-based diet or I've put them on a modified diet where they're eliminating specific things. They're like, what do I do? And so we talk about preparation. I give them a lot of ideas for different types of meals that they can make. I make sure that they are thinking ahead, like what they can bring. If I have a client, for instance, I had a client this week who really does not like to cook, and she actually uses a meal delivery service. And so we talked about different places in DC that she can actually go, like there's a vegan bakery, and there's different places where she can go and grab things and take them with her and her husband to their parents' house. So different things like that. A lot of times people are trying to figure out, how do I maintain it despite the external pressure? Because food is social. We forget that, like, food is a really social thing. And so it can be really hard if you are trying to make your life better, but everyone in your family eats ham hocks and ribs and all the stuff that you are not supposed to be eating, or that Dr. Montgomery told you was on your do not eat list, then you're gonna have some issues, and people might make fun of you. I mean, I was hazed my entire life being Nigerian and being vegan. Everyone thought I was very strange. So you have to then engage. And the way that I dealt with it is I'm really good at cooking. So I would just make things and not say anything, and people would enjoy it and leave me alone eventually. Yeah.
Well, you brought up some interesting things, the food and the emotional component to it as well. Celeste, I know you deal with children, but the whole issue of alcohol and food and, this, when I was a kid, I enjoyed eating. The holidays is my favorite time of year because I enjoyed eating the food. I had a big appetite as a kid. But just listening to Sosa talk, I thought of something just now in terms of food. We like to eat certain foods and like to eat certain types of things. But then the idea of alcohol came in, and it's also a drug, and people drink a lot. And then I started thinking about, Sosa, you got my mind really roaming here during your discussion. I started also thinking about the emotional factors that come up during the season, toxic families, loss of loved ones, and the like. And are we drinking alcohol to soothe those pains, and are we eating bad food to soothe those pains? What are your thoughts? And before you come in, I'm going to bring Dr. Atkins in. Hello, Dr. Atkins. How are you doing today?
Good afternoon. Good evening. Sorry I'm late, but I got caught up.
Happy Monday. So what are your thoughts? Or maybe you have other thoughts, but that was just something that came to mind in terms of the holiday season.
As far as alcohol?
Well, alcohol, food, emotions. Are we eating bad food as a drug during this? We eat bad food year-round.
Definitely. And I think, let me just speak on behalf of the children, kind of, I think with COVID and the school year being an alternative school year and the children not being able to have contact with their friends, I think what happens is people are allowing more of the entertainment food, because we eat for entertainment. And so that is what we're going to see. That's what we're seeing more of. And that's why people are eating more sugars probably this year too. As we talked about in one of the talks with our sugar talk, it does give us a up feeling for a little while before it crashes. So it makes you feel better in a time where, there feels like there's chaos all around us. Because I think we all can still feel this kind of change in our society, and things are definitely not normal. So in an effort to try to normalize our current reality, I think people, and that's why Christmas started before Halloween this year, because people are trying to normalize their lives again by saying, okay, we're going to have a good holiday season. COVID is here, so we can't meet up like we used to, but we're going to still prep all of these foods. The children are at home, so I think they're going to, children enjoy baking, which is fine. But, I think we have to be mindful of the volume and what types of things we're baking. And so that's where the danger comes in, because it becomes a ticket to allow the children to have an enjoyable time, since we've had such a stressful year. But we have to remember that, it can have long-term effect on our body, but also with children, it can have a long-term effect on what you're teaching them, how to take care, how to handle stress. Because when you do this, you're teaching them that take care of stress with food. And we know that becomes a problem later on in life when they are an adult and they are now stress eating. So, I think it's multi-level.
So stress eating, you mentioned another component there. And so there are multiple things that are coming together. And oftentimes it's hard to figure out what the chicken or the egg is. So in other words, the holiday seasons are coming. And so perhaps, there's some emotional issues that people are dealing with, and they're trying to mask them with food. And of course, I mentioned alcohol that may or may not be part of it with the kids, or there are festivities and we're enjoying ourselves and we may be eating bad food because of enjoyment as well. And of course, we're not exercising as much. And so these are some of the things that we're having to deal with. Now, you mentioned another unique factor of what we're dealing with this year, which is COVID-19. And so 2020 has been an unusual year in the sense that, we've had, we're dealing with this pandemic and quote unquote pandemic. And of course, the news media is all over it. So, the world, the sky is falling, everybody's dying. And so, people are afraid and nervous. And so we're going into this holiday season, and some places saying you can't celebrate Thanksgiving. You can't, be with your family. You can do Zoom calls. You're not even able to sing songs, or with your family, bring your own plate. There's a lot of unusual things that we're doing because we're in an unusual part of the year. And we're actually at a peak part of the year for having health issues and emotional issues, but we're in a peak year for having emotional stress due to this pandemic. And I think it's our reaction to the pandemic is more detrimental than the pandemic itself. Dr. Atkins, what say you about, this holiday season and some of the pitfalls and things that we're having to deal with?
Well, I have to agree with both of you 100% on the fact that it's a combination of the stress and the eating. I think number one, I have to figure out what a vicious cycle starts, because, when you're feeling the stress caused by the media or your environment and the changes that's going on, it triggers that flight or fright syndrome in people. And that tends to make them gravitate toward the carbs and the starches. And since alcohol is nothing but a sugar, also they gravitate toward that for the adults. And so then the more you eat the sugars and the starches, the more you get the highs and the lows swinging. 2 hours later, you're going to get a low, and then you got to go grab some more again. And so you end up craving these starches to come off of a low after eating starches all day. And so you're going up and down all day with your blood sugar, and you don't really get things that level you out, like eating proteins or eating, good fats, which will really help alleviate that, bring you out of that area. So the holidays is going to exacerbate it. The stress I hear now is also what you're speaking of is with the holidays and people not being able to see family. it's a really strange feeling, even for me. And, in our family, we've always been big, since I was a child, we've always been big Thanksgiving people, where Thanksgiving was a big dinner, and not just the dinner, but the family came together. And so I think that creates a sense of stress and a sense of loneliness. So people gravitate, they go into depression. So they want to feel that depressive episode with more, sugars and starches, with sweets, because the sweets actually make you feel good and make you taste good and make you kind of calm down. If I could just have that bowl of ice cream, or if I could eat cake all day, or I could just eat, potato chips, or whatever it took was my poison or food of choice. They would do that. So yeah, I have to agree that the holidays is going to be devastating, and I don't, I think it's going to take it to, I don't know if it's a new high or new low by going through Christmas and New Year's with people, because I don't know if they're going to be more depressed afterwards, because not only, normally people who didn't have family would feel lonely. You would invite them over your house for holidays, but now everybody's kind of without family. So you got more people having that sense of loneliness and depression. So I don't know how many people are going to jump off the bridge in January. I hate to say it.
Well, maybe the people without family will feel better because they know everyone else is without family. So this year will be a peak year for people without family. So the lonely folks are saying, well, everybody is lonely, so I feel good.
Yeah, nobody's going anywhere.
And then maybe also it could be just to broaden the definition of stress in the sense of stress in the sense of boredom for kids, because kids don't really sense stress. That they do, but we don't think about it like the stress that adults have. Yeah. But they get bored, and so when they get bored, they like to eat foods. So that can also, that also is a major thing, because for some people, yes, we have people where the holidays are emotionally a downturn, but some people are really happy during the holidays, but they still do a lot of eating. So, whether you're on the lower side or the higher side, people are eating. And I think it's just kind of setting yourself, giving yourself some goals before we start into the holidays, I guess, which is this week, and trying to stay on some type of eating schedule, such that you're not eating Thanksgiving all the way up until Christmas and eating Christmas all the way up until the new year.
Well, one of the things that I always ask people, especially if they struggle with, there's a lot of things that I do if they struggle with emotional eating, but if they struggle with emotional eating, one of the things that I do is have them start to ask what they're actually hungry for. And in that moment, because a lot of times in that moment, you're bored, like you said, or you need a hug or whatever it is. And you would actually realize that cake is not the hug. And then maybe you will call someone and do something about it. So I think the reason why there are people on both ends of the spectrum is because, again, like when we're kids, we learn to either eat when we're really happy or eat when we're sad. And sometimes that pattern continues when we're older. And then we continue that behavior. And so we're feeling merry, so we eat more, or we're not feeling good, and so we eat more. And so neither extreme is necessarily good. It's just better to get into a place where you're in this balanced place where you can enjoy your meal, but have enough movement and have enough social interaction, that you're not, so isolated that you're eating just from your feelings.
Yeah, I have a semi-solution, and I see that question, but I wanted to throw this in. So sometimes I'll tell parents to try this before you start dinner or whatever you're going to do. Remember, like when you go out to a restaurant or you're having a 3-course meal, you start with a salad. So if you're feeling that sense of hunger, just go ahead and get a salad first. And then if you're still hungry afterwards, then go ahead and eat the other stuff. But start with the salad. Every time you feel that hunger, if you're really hungry, you'll eat the salad. If you're not hungry, you're not going to eat the salad.
Please qualify salad, because lots of people have with the cheese and.
a plant-based salad.
Croutons.
Yeah.
But it's also like people need to stop treating Thanksgiving like it's their last meal on earth. Like this is not like if we treat it like a normal meal and we're like, look, I have all of these great leftovers for the rest of the week, that would also help. But like people are straight up eating like it's gonna be done after this.
Yeah. There's like a race to the kitchen. Well, so we touched on a number of good things here. The eating is really a big one. And, we sort of lumped it with drugs. We didn't say a lot about alcohol, but people do drink more this time of the year, I'm told, and I've read, than other times of the year. Not that, drinking is not a problem year round. And so there's a chicken and egg factor. Are we eating badly to address our emotional issues, et cetera? The issue of families, the lack thereof, or the presence of toxic families are there. So that's an issue we have to think about. And then the other thing about this year being a special year, dealing with the so-called pandemic, where many people are isolated. I was talking to my cousins this weekend, and they're a very close-knit family. And one of my cousins was saying that, they were at my dad's house after it passed. And so they said, that was the first time they had gotten together as sisters in about, 4 or 5 months, which was highly unusual. And it was because of the pandemic and everyone's staying in the house, staying masked and separated. So we have an extra problem we're dealing with. Before we go off the topic of pitfalls and problems, I want to think of these pitfalls as not just pitfalls and isolations, but associated with overall problems. There are a couple of questions I'm going to address in just a minute. But the data clearly shows that the winter months, particularly, the December and January, but Christmas time is a peak time for deaths, particularly cardiovascular deaths. And looking at the different cardiovascular causes, I pulled an article here. Blood clots, deep vein thrombosis peak during the wintertime. Blood clots to the lung or pulmonary embolism, maximum during the wintertime, minimum during the summertime. Rupture of the aortic vessel artery, dissection rupture higher in the wintertime. And this is in United States, other European countries. Stroke, again, peak in the wintertime. Heart failure, more hospitalizations occur during the wintertime. Atrial fibrillation, peak episodes during the wintertime. Before coming on, I had a call for a patient of mine who's in the hospital, decompensated heart failure and anginal syndrome. Ventricular arrhythmias, peak in the wintertime. Sudden cardiac death, peak in the wintertime. And so we're dealing with a lot of these issues, and there's a seasonal, I think it's kind of a weird juxtaposition of tis the season for joy and being together, but it's also tis the season for death and sickness. And so it's an unusual, weird juxtaposition of things where we're supposed to be the happiest, but yet we're dealing with loss of loved ones or illness, major illnesses. So how do we address this, and how do we get our arms around it and understand this? I'll show you a little graphic real quick. We have here of course, this is the graphic peak time for deaths juxtaposed with the beautiful time of the year. But you see here where we have Christmas Eve being a peak time for deaths, and then New Year's Day, peak time for deaths. Now, we talked about the holiday season starting before this time, and we know how the fact that, I'll bring the screen out, the holiday season is where we're dealing with these illnesses, but we're also dealing with the side effects or the results or the complication of these illnesses. So I've always had a theory that this progressive lifestyle, the emotional stress, the bad eating, the lack of fresh air and sunshine, being indoors, it increases the oxidative stress above normal. And so if you've had years of development of heart disease, and then you go into this year where, okay, you're increasing your oxidative stress, you're eating bad food, you're inside a lot, emotionally you're stressed out, that's going to predispose to tipping you over. And so I think that's one explanation. Now, of course, the article I've looked up talked about the temperature itself contributing to physiology of the body, lack of vitamin D. Of course, they talk about emotional stress. And I think these things are important too. But I like to think of it as, hey, wait a minute, we're going into a season, and the way we handle this, whether we're happy or sad, is that we do negative things to our body. And perhaps as we talk about the solution, maybe we can figure out how we can address this in a way to not do negative things to our body. So, the loss of loved ones during this time, feeding into emotional stress, depression, causing us to eat more. We're having more funerals during this time. And we go to the funeral, guess what they serve after the funeral? Bad food. And then, you go to the Christmas party, bad food, and so on and so forth. And then you're in the house more because of the weather and so on. So I think if we understand this scenario that what we're dealing with, hopefully we can then say, wait a minute, let's step back. We know what the problem is. How can we address it next year? How can we address it this year, perhaps? Let me hit these questions real quick while y'all ponder those comments. Zorro, eating bad food because it's a holiday is like putting diesel in your car because it's the anniversary of the date you bought it. And then Carlos Haynes, the nutritious, can you comment on the pros and cons of having an alkaline diet compared to a plant-based dietary needs? I'm not sure. So you want to try to tackle that? Or?
I don't really understand the question, but
most plant-based diets are alkaline, but yeah, I mean a healthy alkaline, but yeah.
I mean, I had a CNS mentor who's been practicing for like 40 years, who was really into acid versus alkaline and would make people only eat things with certain pH, and that worked for her. Mm-hmm. She wasn't really into plant-based, so they were still eating animal products. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it would depend on the person, but generally speaking, if you're eating a plant-based diet, it's going to be alkaline, as long as you're not mainlining processed plant-based foods and a lot of packaged things.
Yep, packaged junk is going to be the problem. So, any other thoughts to some of the problems I raised? Increased deaths. What do y'all see in the pediatric population?
Well, I wanted to say something else that I had a thought when you were just speaking. So if we follow, and Dr. Atkins can probably chime in here because he's has worked with the land and farming. But if we follow the earth and what the earth gives us, right? So in the summertime, the earth gives us fruit for hydration because it's hot outside. In the wintertime, the earth gives us naturally in this part of the world greens because they are nutrient rich and nutrient dense. So if we follow what the earth is giving us and eat what the earth is giving us, it would probably protect us a little bit more. But we have a very difficult time nowadays, especially the children, getting any greens in. And then when we do eat greens, we're eating them cooked. So we're kind of changing the structure of them. So I think if we, simplify it a little bit and just go back to looking at what the earth does during certain seasons and kind of staying in that zone, it would probably help a little bit. This season is squash, greens, oranges, grapefruit, kind of trying to eat a little bit more in season.
Yeah, I would even say a lot more. I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I think that we should do a lot more. Dr. Atkins, any comment? You're our local farmer here.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely correct. If we could get people to do that, what has corrupted that whole concept is the system, it's our food system, because now since people don't buy local, you can get your fruits, the best fruits year round. Whether, in the wintertime we get fruits from Australia, apples from Australia, the Fuji apples and Honeycrisp apples come from Australia, but that should only be a fall crop. So that's really what's confusing people. And people, again, will make poor choices because they want to buy strawberries in December and buy strawberries in March, when that's, April, May, June is the strawberries and blackberries. Those are the berry season. So that has an effect on people not getting that well-balanced diet or a well-balanced, what I call nutrient base, whether it's minerals, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants that way, because they eat the same thing all the time. And that's going to hamper your immunity in the long run.
Wow. And I think we're going to have to do a special show on gardening and farming and eating local, because I think as both of you raise the point, that's a very important point to raise. And you know, Celeste, you brought that issue of gardening up a number of times on other shows, and I think it's very important. You know, we talk about gardens and that type of thing as though it's a cute thing, but I think gardening is something that we probably should treat. I mean, I'm becoming more and more convinced that in my practice, I'm going to have to start teaching people to garden more intentionally. And of course, I'm trying to do it more intentionally myself, and eating locally and things like that. And when I say gardening, you know, everybody doesn't have a big backyard or farm or whatever, but you know, we have some capability to do something. And so we need to look at where we are and figure out how we can, you know, at least eat in from our local environment, and to some extent plant things, whether it's on a back porch or whatever the case is, and progressively move in that area where we're, you know, planting and eating our food from our local environment. Because I think that's more than a trivial point. Let's see, Zoro has a point here. No, this is Zoro. Blending greens with fruit is a delicious way to get kids to consume more greens. Certainly in smoothies, I imagine. And then, of course, Apricot says, I use frozen fruit in my smoothies along with room temperature bananas. So, you know, these are different techniques. And what I want to do is take a break right now. And we're going to go to this next segment. And what I want to do is talk about some of the solutions. We've done a good job of outlining the problems and making everybody feel bad about things. So what I would like for us to do is now come and perk things up and empower our audience. So let's all take a break. We'll come back.